joy of switching the engine off. We're sort of sailing. There's 3 knots of wind and about 3 knots of current. So we're doing 3.5 knots. The piece is only interrupted by the radio. Well, other than the fact that the sun's not playing today, it's a bit hazy, it's really lovely. It's so calm, I'm actually managing to get some work done. My boat buddies put their spinnaker up, so they're off ahead of me now. Not exactly racing away, but probably got about 1/10 of a knot on me at the moment. We're almost halfway up the Mull of Galway now, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to carry on overnight or put in at Stranraer, or at least in the mouth of the loch there, and anchor up for the night. To be decided. Meanwhile, been getting on with some work. It's nice to be able to work in the cockpit. First time on this trip so far. And the fishing line is out as well. It's 5 o'clock. It's been a highly uneventful and pleasurable passage so far. I've made the decision to keep going overnight and head for Port Ellen for tomorrow afternoon, whenever. Not much happened really so far. One high-speed ferry has passed within a couple of miles. There's another one coming up. It's going to go behind us. See how close he gets. But other than that, nothing. No fish, no dolphins. I've done loads of work, done a little bit of video editing, and the tide is going to turn soon. Probably got about half an hour before we hit slack water, and then tide will be against us. If we carry on as we are now, we're going to slow down to probably a knot or so, and it'll be like that for the following 5 hours. The wind is supposed to shift to the northwest. It's supposed to have shifted by now actually, but no sign of that happening. Still due south. So at some point, probably during the middle of the night, it will shift. No, my luck. But this is a pleasure. And if I can make it to Port Ellen, that's a huge amount of distance ticked off in one go. Feels like making progress. It really does. My sailing companions are now 2 miles ahead of me, thanks to their spinnaker. But it's taken them the best part of the day to get 2 miles ahead of me, so they're not going that much quicker. There he goes, a couple of miles away. They don't half shift though, 20 odd knots. So the wind decides to wait until the current is going in the opposite direction to die. So I'm now sailing backwards. Yeah, like a proper pirate. I think it's going to be a very quiet night. There's a bit of drizzle around as well. So it's 8 PM and there's rain on the way. My guess is that line of clouds probably marks the point where the wind is going to shift from south to northwest. Let's wait and see, shall we? I don't think it's going to be very long before I'm in amongst that, even though I'm not actually moving. I've been not actually moving for quite some time now. Primarily, of course, because the current is set right against me. At 2 knots. Oh, is that 2? Yeah, 2 knots of current against me. Well, it turns out I can just about make the Mull of Kintyre before the tide turns again, as long as the wind holds out. So I'm going to stop there, drop the anchor, wait out the next foul tide, get some sleep, and then up anchor again 11:30 AM to get the next good tide out and towards Port Ellen. That's the plan. It's been quite an interesting night. We've been squirreling around in the foul tide and the wind has shifted to the northwest now, thankfully. I'm going to put myself in this little bay here. There's an anchorage there, and get some well-earned sleep. And we're off again at about 4 hours kip at the tip of the Mull of Kintyre, and kettle's on, making a cup of tea. It's blowing 18 knots. Got one reef in each sail. There you go, behind me. The Mull of Kintyre. On our way to Port Ellen, hopefully. The wind currently is coming from the northwest, which is the direction we need to go in. But it is supposed to back round to the west, so hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later. That's Sander Island in the distance. Spent a few nights there last year. Lovely spot, absolutely gorgeous. The anchorage by the lighthouse is just stunning. There's no other word for it. That's where we anchored last night, or this morning rather. About 5:30ish, got in there, in bed by 6, up again at 10:30. And there is Sky, my sailing buddy. I caught up with you, pal. I wonder if they're going to Port Ellen as well. Oh well, mate. If you're watching my channel at any point, there's your boat. Check it out, sailing in a t-shirt. That's what I should have named the channel. Frankie, if you're watching, sailing in a t-shirt. First time this trip. It's really quite warm now. I'm in the sun. It was bitterly cold last night. I had to put the heating on, it was so cold. It's mid-single digits. I was literally cold to the bone by the time I got the anchor down. And that's with, I don't know, 5-6 layers on. Just going across the mouth of the shipping lanes. I will tack shortly. There's a ship coming up. He's going to be entering the shipping channel. I'm just edging across the mouth of the lane he'll need to go through. So before he gets here, I'll tack so he knows exactly where I'm going. I'm being followed by a camera shy porpoise. Every time I turn the camera on, it disappears. Really good 2 days of technical sailing. So keeping going overnight was a really good option. Glad I did that. And I got to sail backwards, like every good pirate should. I just need a really big hat. Looking forward to getting a couple of days rest at Port Ellen, although the weather looks like it's going to be absolutely amazing for the next few days. It's going to be high pressure and not necessarily warm and sunny, but certainly perfect sailing winds. I have to see how I feel. I'm just desperate to get there and have a shower. No idea how badly I want a shower. And after, well, the winds have been on and off all day. They've now decided to be on. We've got 16 knots blowing us along. So we're making really good progress despite the fact that the current is now shifting. We're going into Port Ellen there. Just had a chat with the guy on the radio, he said there's loads of room, help yourself. Take the opportunity to have a shower, have a Chinese takeaway and fill up the fuel tank. So I've had a lovely break here at Port Ellen. Met some fantastic people, lots of other sailors who are proper sailors. And if you're a sailor, you'll know what I mean. Feeling fully rested and refreshed. I've decided not to go to Tiree. The sea state out there is really not good. Speaking to the skipper of one of the boats that's just come in, and the wind is gusting up to 30 knots, so I don't really fancy it tonight. You wouldn't believe it, here in the marina it seems so calm, but out there is a different story. So what I'm probably going to do is head off and anchor in the bay tonight, and then head inside the islands rather than outside in a series of day sails from here. He actually came and met me on the pontoon to take my lines when I arrived. Always the joy in the sailing community really is that most people are extremely friendly, and it's very easy with something in common to find their time to sit and chinwag for hours. Anyway, I wish him and his wife fair sailing, and I may well bump into them further on, who knows. The wind has dropped, so I think I'm going to get out of here and get myself an anchor. And away we go. Let's talk for a few minutes about getting into sailing in the first place. So I constantly see questions on forums and Facebook, people asking how to get started, how to learn, what's the best route. I can't answer that question. I don't know the best route. All I can do is tell you about how I got into it. That all started really with a friend of mine called Chris, who introduced me to a sailing charity called the Discovery Sailing Project. They're based down on the Hamble, on the Solent, down on the south coast near the Isle of Wight, and it was ideal for me really. I'd been looking for a way to learn to sail, and I'd also been desperately seeking a way to give back to the community, because throughout all my previous years all I'd done was take, really, a consumer, living in my little grey box. So I was also very lucky to be invited to crew on a sailing team for the company I worked for their annual regatta, and I did that 3-4 years on the trot, which was great fun. But the charity take groups of kids on offshore sailing adventures, and in the summer they do longer trips. They take part in the tall ships races and things like that. So it was really nice to be able to take the kids out, teach them a bit about sailing, get them to run the boat for a long weekend, and I ended up doing pretty much every other weekend out there sailing with the charity. They in return for my time, taught me to sail. The people on the project are all wonderful, and the skippers are giving their time away for free. It's really nice that they're so keen and willing to impart their skills and knowledge to people like me, so that when I get out here doing this with several years of experience under my belt, I feel safe. I feel like I'm not a danger to anyone else, and I have got the confidence to be able to do what I'm doing solo. And by the way, that first throwing the lines off solo and going is seriously scary. I procrastinated for a month before I did it, and it was only thanks to a good friend of mine, Sue, that decided to encourage me by coming along for the first weekend to get me going. I don't think I could have done it without Sue's help. I think I probably would have ended up procrastinating for another month or months. But the charity gave me the opportunity to build my skills, and they also helped with getting the qualifications so that I could work my way up from a supernumerary all the way up to mate. I think I probably would have been aiming towards being a skipper on the project this year if I wasn't here doing this. I'm sure I will end up going back to the project at some point. I've just got to get a little bit of wanderlust out of my system first. I must admit, I do miss all the guys. I hope you're all well and enjoying life, and I hope everything's going really well at the charity. More friends left behind. But there you go. The best way I found for me to get into sailing and build up the miles, build up the experience, get the qualifications was, without a shadow of a doubt, to do it on someone else's boat, and with the help and guidance of some extremely experienced and very kind and lovely skippers. So thank you all at the charity. Thank you Discovery Sailing Project. I'll see you again soon, hopefully. So I've just had to stop the music for a minute. Been rocking out to the greatest rock anthems of all time. I was working, done a conference call and a couple of phone calls this morning, but sun's gone in and it's difficult to work on a laptop with gloves on now. It's getting a bit chilly, so rocking out to some good tunes instead. But in the meantime, that's Islay there, and we're just coming up to Jura. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's not super cold, not like it has been the last couple of days, but it's not warm. That's for sure. But we're making good progress. 4 knots, wind on the beam. Tide is against us at the moment, but it's not much here. Crossing my fingers and hoping later on when we go through the narrower part that we're at the right time to catch the tide going in the other direction. We should be, in which case I should be able to make it to Mull. If not, I'll have to anchor up and wait for the tide to change. Set off again in the morning, I guess. At least there's plenty of options for anchoring here on the inside. Had I gone on the outside, not so many. Very few. But at least here on the inside it's nice and calm and flat. About 10 knots of wind, and there's quite a few other boats around. Right, back to my rock. Have a nice little sing-song and a dance. That'll keep me warm. belting up the Sound of Jura at 6.5 knots, and for a change I'm winning a race. Actually winning 2 races, because there's 2 of the boats out here. Although that one in the distance back there on the right, he was ahead of me before, now he's behind me. Oh, he's nice. And there's Jura. Between 12 and 15 knots of wind. If the sun came out, it'd be super happy days. Currently in the Sound of Jura. Really glad I made the decision to come on the inside, because the wind has been building and building all day. We're now getting gusts of 25 knots. Average wind speed is probably about 20, and we're doing 8.5 knots. Occasionally when we get a big gust, a little bit more. So yeah, glad I wasn't on the outside. Still, I put a reef in, very stable at the moment, just going very quickly. We've got a bit of current behind us, only 1/2 knot. This guy must be in a real hurry. He's motor sailing in 20 knots of wind. I'm doing 8 knots, over 8 knots. Crazy. Well, I've changed my mind. I'm going to shoot the gap and head for Mull. I'm not going to anchor up. Should be there by about 7 or 8 p.m. So it seems worth it for me. Get that little bit further. And I'm not the only one. I've got 3 yachts in company doing exactly the same. So, although as you saw, one of those yachts is motor sailing, so I kind of get the impression he might make it through there a bit quicker than the rest of us. Now I know why they had their engines on. Through the overfalls. Quite some current there.